Chemists, let's talk about open-ended questions. Let's face it, nobody likes the using your knowledge of chemistry open-ended questions in the exam, but part of the problem is knowing how to start with writing your answer. Because often you'll find once you get started, you kind of get into a flow and it makes it a bit easier and more ideas start popping into your head. So I'm going to give you a little tip on how you can potentially lay out your answer in order to help you get started. The example questions I've got here are for National 5 chemistry, but it doesn't matter because you can use this method for any level of chemistry. So to get started, what you want to do is to split your page up into quarters. And the reason you want to do this is because it's always a good idea to try and pick 4 subtopics or 4 things that you can discuss in your answer. Once you've got your page into quarters, you want to then scan through the question and pick out any chemistry things that flag up. So reading through it, we've got things like excess acid, that would be like chemistry. Then we've also got chemicals like calcium carbonate, that's more chemistry. They mention neutralizing, more chemistry. Then it goes on to talk about doing an experiment to determine which of the 2 brands is most effective at neutralizing an acid. So because this question is really asking you to explain an experiment, you kind of want to split your 4 quarters into then background chemistry, what your method would be, the results, and then your conclusion. And then you're basically wanting to try and fill the box with as much information related to that heading as you can. If you run out of space in your box, don't worry, because you can go and use the extra pages at the back of the paper. So in your background chemistry box, you want to pick out the chemistry things they've mentioned and talk about them as much as possible. So it mentions acids, talk about acids, things like them having higher hydrogen ion concentrations than hydroxide ion concentrations, all that sort of stuff, what their pH is, etc. Then they've mentioned calcium carbonate, so talk about as much about calcium carbonate as you can. It is a base, so it should neutralise the acid. Talk about neutralisation reactions. When you're talking about these things, draw any diagrams that are relevant, write any chemical equations that are relevant. All of these things help show a good depth of the chemistry involved. Then in your method box, you want to draw a picture of the apparatus they would use and describe the experiment that you would suggest they use to compare the effectiveness of the tablets. So in this case, what you're probably going to be doing is putting an acid in a test tube and then adding some of the calcium carbonate. And then you want to talk about in this box what results they would be collecting. So are they going to collect gas that's released, or are they going to measure pH? It's also good to give options as well. So if there are 2 options of experiments or 2 options of types of results you can collect, then talk about both options, because it just shows you have a broader knowledge of chemistry. And then the conclusion box is how they would then use the results to form a conclusion to answer the question. Now this conclusion bit's the bit that I see most often missed out in these experiment-based open-ended questions. So how would you use the results to answer the question that's been posed to you? How would the results tell you which one is the most effective? So next time you get an open-ended question based on an experiment, try structuring your answer like this and see if it helps you get started and come up with more ideas as you go. This video ended up a lot longer than expected, so I will do a part 2 where we look at non-experiment based open-ended questions, ones where it's just talking about theory. Bye!